as some of you may have known, I came on live late last night. Right now, this is a time when my parents are still at church. They're not home yet. As y'all know, I'm kind of a believer myself, but the thing is, I don't really attend church services. It's, just probably because of the way it is, how I get out in public, and just because I kind of get claustrophobic in the crowds. Sometimes I just have a problem sitting still the whole time. Sometimes it might just have a little bit to do with what I might have to wear, what's appropriate to wear, what people expect you to wear, and there's just kind of different ways it goes. And just to say that it's just kind of different from each to the next of us. But what I really want to get on here today is to kind of finish up what I was showing you yesterday. I carved 5 out of 10 of these Santas where I made out the brim of the hat yesterday, as you can see. I have decided that I would get on here today while I carve a few more, and we'll kind of have little talks while we're doing it, and just kind of speak about all the ways that this little carving thing goes. I love to carve, but as you all know, I kind of love to talk too. I love to make a lot of these things and tell you all about things while I do it. And there's just a lot we hear these days, and a lot that's going on these days, and I sometimes get up in the morning, and especially on a Sunday, might occasionally kind of see little things online that I might tune into for a moment, and there's times when things will get a little boring and difficult to sit through here and there. Sometimes the live videos lag. Sometimes they can be a little bit difficult to have to sit through, and sometimes I think that the issue can be that whenever it comes to how everybody expresses things, there's some of these live videos where people get on just to answer questions that people put in the chat feed, and of all the things they do, I say that it's just among those things where little things can just kind of make things a little difficult to have to sit and wait through, because the reality is that everybody doesn't have the same amount of patience. Sometimes I feel like I can have just as much patience by trying to avoid being in any situation where anything could happen or be a certain way that I might not otherwise have the patience for, because that's what I do. Is I try to kind of put things off, try to kind of stay in places where I can be safe, and try not to put myself in any situation where I'm probably going to say anything that I shouldn't, because sometimes it's just kind of like how they always say, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. It's kind of a saying that was real common in my days. It was often said in the Bambi movies. It was one thing that Thumper, the rabbit's father, told him, and it was all the things that we just kind of have to kind of put ourselves aside from situations. Sometimes everybody just kind of has their own little points of view about things, and everybody has their own ideas of what patience is and what patience isn't. And I think that sometimes it does do us a little better just to try to do what's easier for us sometimes. You know, you're not being impatient if you just try to avoid putting yourself in any situation that you're not going to have the patience to deal with. But sometimes, just sometimes, people think it is. The world kind of changes the older we grow, and everything gets a little different. Sometimes the times can change, and I was talking in my last video about a verse out of Ecclesiastes, but I think about another one I read that's in that same little book of the Bible that goes, one generation passes away as earth abides forever. So that's just right there saying that until Jesus comes back, there will always be an earth, there will always be a world we will live in, and that earth will remain for a long time. But it all comes down to being the fact that things are going to change from one generation to the next. The world is kind of different now from the one I grew up in. It's just a lot different now from the one that a lot of my generation grew up in. I know that even as an older person, I'm probably getting to the point where I'm getting a little feeble here and there. Sometimes I kind of lose the strength to do a lot of the things I did when I was younger. And sometimes there's also kind of coming that point in our life where as we get older, we start learning that we have more responsibilities to take care of in life. Yes, responsibilities will change from one of us to the next. And the older we get, the more we have to accept them. Sometimes, because of my special needs, there's been certain responsibilities I haven't had in my hands yet that people younger than me have. Sometimes I tell you all, I see the fact that I get online, and sometimes my friends might kind of complain a little bit about how it is they have to work as much as they do, how they'd like to have shorter work days than they have because there's so much more to explore in life. But as we all get older in life, we just kind of discover that, like I tell people, you could be like me and have shorter work days on account of being disabled, but you'd have many more realities to accept. And believe me, I tell y'all, I find the older I get, the more I find myself having to accept a lot of realities that all my life I didn't expect I'd always have to accept. I didn't expect it would always be this way. There have even been some that, by the time I was certain ages, I probably outgrew them. Some things were things in life that just took me longer to get to than they did other people. But then again, what it all comes down to is that there are also some of the things in life that might always be your realities. There are always going to be the things in life that you might never be able to do. Realities come and realities go. And there are those that always remain with us. As you can see here, I've got these last 5 Santas to do, and coming to the point where I'm trying to trim off the hats of every last one of them. I will tell you all that there's other things I do, like I go into Starbucks and into McLeod's coffee shop, and in those places I often like to sit and sew while I'm enjoying a coffee or a tea or a refresher or something like that. These places, there's good people in these places. There's nice and kind people in these places. There's a world out there of people who seem to understand, and yes, I will tell you all that the people out there who are so kind to us, You know, they are few and far between, but they are out there. They are out there in this world. They make a lot of us think and see things from points of view we may not have otherwise known. For all we know that sometimes, just sometimes, there might even be some people who you see in this world. They may not be nice to everybody. They may not be patient with everybody. They may not always say the most respectful things to everybody. But some of these people, I mean, they might have been my friends because I was so kind to them. Maybe it's all one of those things where, you know, you get a little older and you realize that sometimes it's all about things you have in common. It's all about things that you have interests in. Sometimes somebody's interest might be the same as yours, and it'll be a little easy thing to pick up on. There are also times when I find out what other people's interests are and might pick up on theirs because they appeal to me. They might be interests that to me might mean so much, and sometimes the people might be so good that I might be able to pick up on something they like their favorite animal, their favorite color. Sometimes I gather people's favorite colors and favorite creatures and will sometimes like to make my projects based on them. There have been some projects I probably made to start with, and then they probably got a little old with time. They might not have been the kind of thing that sold all that well or sold all that easily, but as of last January, I just decided to move a little forward and decide to kind of try to make things like my mother was suggesting. Things that would probably be a good way to make some extra money and be able to pay a few bills a little better for my future retirement. That's probably going to be a long way, probably another 25 years maybe, but it's all going to be the kind of thing that comes to be worth it in the end. I've been trying to do all I could do just to try to save myself up a pension. Back in the old days, I worked in a hospital and had a lot of good benefits, but couldn't really understand. I was almost 21 when I started working there, and I was 25 when I got fired. It was really just a little termination thing because you exceed the tardy policy. You were only allowed to have up to 12 tardies in a year, and I had 13 in a year's time. And it's like on the anniversary of the tardy pays off, the tardy breaks off, so it's kind of like one of those things with how a year's time works. And the thing was that, you know, you just really can't abuse the system in places like that. There have been times when I'd come in late or even forget to clock out or forget to clock in, and even if you are there on time and leave on time, sometimes the fact that you might forget to clock out or forget to clock in could count against you as a tardy. Sometimes even the fact that you might leave a little early for a certain reason, that could count against you as a tardy. And it was kind of wonderful how there were the years of my life when, for quite a few years, I mean, I got away with tardies on the job when other people couldn't. I don't know why it was, but sometimes I feel there were times when I was cut a little bit more slack than I should have been. And there was at least one person there who got this started, and a few other people did too. But little funny thing about that place was that they called me the king of tardies. I never understood why they called me that, but I think it could very well be because for the amount of time that I was able to get away with having so many, I was. Could have been worse for anybody else if they had as many in a year's time as I did. You know, they'd probably would have gotten written up sooner. And there was a little bit of a way how the warnings worked. It's like, you know, you had 4 and you had an oral warning. You had 8 and you had a written warning. Then once you had like over 12, it was termination. I don't remember all the things about how it worked, but you know, it was kind of hard for them to give me those warnings for a while because couldn't really stress it to y'all. It probably wasn't a good way to come into work, and probably wasn't funny the fact that sometimes I'd kind of come in there and not clock in, or leave and not clock out, and sometimes it was just to kind of see what kind of little prank I could pull by that. And sometimes I'd say that when you get in the workplace and you start playing these pranks, sometimes the pranks don't last long. I mean, there was a little issue with the fact that sometimes those secretaries and those managers, they'd get really fed up with having to write my time in. So on one of those jobs I worked there, I had a supervisor who they'd always report it to, and he'd come back down and come back into the little place where I worked, and he'd tell me all about that. Little times in our lives, you know, we were young, we didn't know much, we didn't think much, and there were times in my life I was under 25, had to pay high premiums on my car insurance, and probably thought too, you know, that felt like most of the money I made went to paying off my car and my insurance, and felt like the job didn't pay much because it was hard for me to be able to afford to do much of anything else. And felt at the same time like I worked with a couple of guys who were younger than me by a couple of years. They'd come in there, they'd goof off, and they'd play games, and they'd harass me if I didn't get involved, and it was really not a good place to be, because it was just one of those things where these guys, I mean, they could probably get by with stuff I couldn't. They taunt me into doing stuff with them, and if I did it with them, I was always the one in trouble. It's always kind of different from one of us to the next as far as how things work out in our workplaces. There kind of came the time when, after I turned 25, I started to get so independent because my car insurance went down. Started trying things I never tried before, staying out late at night. Just kind of doing what to me was probably what I thought was the adult things to do, that I probably felt like I was finally at the point in my life where I could do them, where I could try them, and ended up kind of getting to the point where it led to me having so many tardies on the job that I lost my job. And not too many months later, even for the things I kind of continued to go out and do, I'd get a little lethargic here and there, sometimes forget my medication and try not to take it to drive down the road. And ended up having a wreck and totaling my car, even though I might have been 25 and my insurance already gone down. It once, since I didn't have the money to pay the expenses out of my pocket, and since the insurance company had to take care of them, my insurance went right back up. Little times in our lives when we sometimes don't use good judgments. There have been times I've made little mistakes behind the wheel. That time I had that wreck and totaled my car, I just totally forgot what I was doing. I was so used to being able to drive and not have wrecks, but I had already been driving for quite a few years by the time I had my first wreck and totaled my car. And that was probably because for so many years my insurance was so high and my premiums were so high that I always used my best judgment behind the wheel and drove more carefully, because I didn't want them to go up any higher, didn't want to have to pay any more for them than I already was. And then once it started going way down, it just kind of got to the point where I got to paying less attention. And then when I was getting ready to, let's say, make a right turn on red to leave, I realized I had forgotten something at the house where I was. So, forgetting all about the fact that you really can't go straight on red, I decided to go straight forward, and forgetting what I was doing, thinking I was going to go into that little shopping center parking lot, then turn right back around and go and pick up what I had left at that house that I was leaving. And sure enough, when I was crossing on red, that lady who was coming from the other way, she tried to stop in time for me, but poor thing, she couldn't. Nothing would have happened if I'd been paying attention, but she ended up kind of hitting the back corner of my car and causing me to kind of spin a little bit. And sure enough, I was able to get around and get to the other side of the road, get up into the shopping center parking lot. And I'd forgotten to bring my cell phone, so I had to make a call on a little phone that was in one of the stores up there. We kind of got things taken care of from there. It all got better. It all got good in time. We all took care of things the best way we knew how. Of course, I ended up being without a car for about a month, but a month later it was time for me to start a special school I was going to kind of take a culinary class and get prepared for employment training. So it was kind of one of those things where even after that time, there just wasn't much place to go. Wasn't really able to work a job and make much money. All I had was the little roof I lived under that my parents could provide. And then it just so happened over that time that they kind of worked me into a couple of good jobs. I finally graduated from that school in 6 months, and they finally just got me working alone fine. It was like, of all things I would have preferred, probably would have liked to have been living a more independent life than I was. It was kind of hard to do for a moment like that, because, it's like I was on the spectrum and all, having these little realities. By the time I was the age I was then, there was so much more I thought I'd be doing, so much further along I thought I'd be going in life, so much more independence in life I thought I'd have. And sometimes when you just kind of think that people around you, your age, they're doing things, and they're gaining more independence than they used to have, more than you've ever had. You feel like you're losing your job and losing your pay and losing what independence you did have. I'm telling you all, people, this life was a hard one to live. And some of us, we kind of remain in the school of hard knocks all our lives. Some of us have been different to the point that people couldn't really be our friends. I've been through that particular part of my life. Sometimes until we kind of get to see a video of ourselves or something like that, we don't really become able to look at ourselves. And some of us, those of us who are a little different, don't really get to see how different we really are. It's just a little shameful thing we suffer in life, and sometimes it goes on a little further and further. As I will tell you all now, I'm finally down to carving the last hat top here. And this will be one Santa that I'm doing this with. And just telling you all that sometimes the little commentaries kind of do a little good for us. I'm sure most of my friends, if they're watching, they're probably in church right now if they're not at work or something. And this is probably not the time of day when many people would be online to watch a video, but there's probably going to come a moment when I'm probably going to be turning this off a little later, because things we see, things we know, sometimes I feel like this kind of thing, we have to set our limits on our time and kind of get along a little further. Hopefully one day I can get on here and maybe be able to carve something else while I talk to you all. A little motion of words, a little words that go a far way indeed. Time when we get online and see the things we see, the people we see online, sometimes, just sometimes, you feel like there are those who, because of their own devices, they may not be able to log out. So even when they're asleep, it might look like they're online, even when it's late at night. But see, I'm online late at night because I'm a night owl. Things are going to change over time, and people are going to be better than they were. Some people change for the better, and some change for the worse. I hope I can say that this is getting me into a better state and into a better place, because little times we get online to talk, I've just got so much to say. Most of all, the fact that I've been blessed with the gift to carve these things. People see me at McLeod's, they ask me, how long did it take you to make it? I say that's a hard question. I'd say it probably takes me about as long to carve these things as it does most people to watch TV. I tell them, see, I enjoy it so much. This is practically how I spend my time a day. This is how I practically spend my time a day making things. And it's kind of like how there's so many TV shows out there, so many people are familiar with, know what the shows are, know what they're about, and you could mention to me just about any show you see on TV or Netflix or Roku, or even tell me what it is, and I mean, I won't even know what you're talking about, because it's probably something that I don't see or don't see advertised, because I mean, I practically never pick up a remote, much less go to something to do it. This is how I'd much rather spend my time a day. I just don't like to sit in front of a TV watching a show or a movie. To me, it just gets a little boring to do that. I just kind of work my time away because we just know that some of us have just been skilled to have certain gifts. Some of us have been given certain assistance in our lives that others of us haven't. I may not necessarily have somebody I could room with or share a house with or share an apartment with, but I've got a little space in my basement where I live, in my parents' basement, and just provides me with a lot of good shelter and good home and just a lot of place to work and keep myself busy all the time. It's just like where the Bible tells us whatever we find with our hands to do it as if we're working for the Lord and not for man. And it goes on to say, just remember, it is the Lord Christ you are serving. That can go for our jobs or anything we do, even if it's just things we're working on intensely, even if it's just little things we're doing, trying to just work towards a little bit extra money and maybe be able to carry out our future responsibilities. But anyway, I have come to say that that is all for today, and I'll tell you all that I tried to do a video about sewing yesterday and about my stuffed animals and the work, but my signal got cut off, so I wasn't able to finish it, and I tried to delete it. But I am hoping there will be a day, someday, when I am able to get something together where I might be able to do that. Maybe do it from the bedroom instead of from the shop. That is where most of the patterns are cut out. But anyway, last but not least, I just want to say to you to hang in there and to have a nice day.